For 23 years, I believed I had married the woman of my dreams. At 57, I thought my wife, 2 years younger than me, was not just stunning and intelligent, but also the heart of our home. While I've always been quiet, analytical, and introverted, she was the opposite: warm, outgoing, and naturally empathetic. Together, we balanced each other. We shared a deep connection, filled our years with travel adventures, and raised 3 kids, 2 daughters, and a surprise third, our now 15-year-old son. Our eldest is in her second year at college, about 150 miles from home. As a family, we were lucky. We could afford to take trips every few months, usually somewhere coastal or tropical. Often, we even covered the cost for extended family or friends to join us. Life, on the surface, was incredible. Before this marriage, I had a brief and painful first marriage that ended in my mid-30s. I was too young, insecure, and emotionally dependent at the time, and my ex may have been unfaithful. That split taught me valuable lessons I thought I'd never forget. Career-wise, I had built a strong foundation. I held executive roles at a global firm before a rare condition caused my hearing to deteriorate, forcing me into early retirement. Thankfully, I had managed my finances well, living off investments and savings. Though I missed being part of a team, I found solace in personal projects and time with my family. My wife and I adjusted over time, trading youthful romance for mature companionship. We had household help, the freedom to go out as a couple or a family, and even with my hearing loss limiting social interactions, we made it work. Or so I thought. Then 3 months ago, something shifted. A quiet worry began to grow. And soon, that worry took root and turned into something I couldn't ignore. It all started subtly, little things I might have brushed off if I weren't paying attention. But once that seed of doubt was planted, everything felt louder. Around 3 months before our family vacation in August 2019, our youngest son had just come home from school. We were preparing for one of our big trips, something we all looked forward to. As usual, my wife took the lead on planning. She adored it. Watching her light up while arranging destinations, excursions, and packing lists was one of my quiet joys. But one evening, I caught her on the phone in the kitchen, whispering in a tone that didn't match her usual planning voice. She wasn't syncing calendars with a friend. She was persuading someone. It'll be so much fun, like last time. We can go boating, hit the beach, snorkel. Her voice was sugary sweet, oddly coaxing. I walked in, and the second she noticed me, she nearly dropped the phone, grabbing her chest like I'd scared her half to death. Then, just like that, she acted like everything was normal. She scurried off to the pantry and came back a minute later asking what I wanted for dinner. Odd, considering we'd already talked about dinner hours ago. I shook off the weirdness and went back to watching TV with the kids. At dinner, my wife casually mentioned that our son's longtime friend, let's call him Jason, had texted her, saying he was interested in joining us on the upcoming trip. My son looked confused. He said he hadn't even told Jason about the vacation yet. He'd been planning to bring his girlfriend instead. But apparently, Jason had just texted him too, asking if he could come. It didn't sit right with me. Jason had been our son's best friend since they were teens. We'd known him for years. He was respectful, polite, and came from a hardworking family. My wife always liked Jason and had even given him rides or bought him gifts in the past. He was the kind of kid who could hold a conversation better than many adults. Still, the idea that he just coincidentally wanted to come on our vacation after what I'd overheard, it didn't feel like a coincidence. I should have trusted my instinct right then. But instead, I told myself I was overthinking it. 3 days before our flight, my wife and our teenage daughter went shopping for vacation supplies. They returned hours later with bags of clothes and items, not just for our family, but surprisingly, gifts for Jason too. She'd done things like that before. Jason had been a frequent guest in our home for years. I told myself it was just another act of kindness. But deep down, the timing felt off. Why now? Why him? The day before we left, our son's girlfriend arrived. Later that evening, Jason joined us as well. We all went out to eat, and at first, it was a genuinely enjoyable night. My wife sat beside me, Jason next to our daughter. Everyone laughed, talked, shared stories. But I kept catching her glancing at Jason. Not in a maternal way. Not like a family friend. These were lingering, almost gleeful looks. Too frequent, too lighthearted, too flirtatious. I didn't want to believe it. It seemed impossible. But I couldn't shake the feeling. That night, back at the resort, I went to bed around midnight. My wife stayed up with the kids. I didn't ask questions. I just assumed she'd come to bed soon. But I woke up around 3 a.m. and realized she still wasn't there. The next morning, we packed up and flew business class to our Caribbean destination, a luxury resort on Antigua's southern shore, a place that looked like it belonged on a postcard. White sand, turquoise water, five-star everything. Paradise. That first day, I relaxed alone with a book on the beach while the others went scuba diving. That evening, while I had dinner with our daughter, my wife went out again, with our son, his girlfriend, and Jason. They returned around 1 a.m., and I was awakened by my wife crawling into bed beside me. She smelled faintly of alcohol, and with surprising eagerness, she initiated intimacy. It had been a while since she seemed that enthusiastic. I wanted to believe it was the vacation mood, the fun, the freedom, but something told me it wasn't that simple. The next day, things started to unravel even more. The following morning, as we packed beach bags and towels, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. My credit card, one my wife had used recently, was missing. While checking her suitcase, hoping it had just been misplaced, I stumbled on something else. A small, risque swimsuit. It wasn't just revealing, it was the kind of item you'd expect from someone half her age. Open back, barely there, intentionally provocative. I assumed, or rather hoped, it was meant for me. A vacation surprise. But even that didn't sit right. Later that day, the family split up again. I stayed at the resort to relax. My wife claimed she was going out for dinner with the kids and Jason. But by 10 p.m., only our son, his girlfriend, and our daughter had returned. My wife and Jason, still out. When I asked where they were, the kids casually said she and Jason had gone on some local wildlife tour. Odd, considering nothing like that was planned, and it was now well into the night. Around 1 a.m., I couldn't sleep. I stepped out of the bedroom into the suite's living area and instantly sensed something was off. I saw movement. The TV was on. Jason was stretched out shirtless on the couch. My wife lay on the adjacent sofa wearing that very same revealing swimsuit beneath a loose wrap. As soon as they heard the door open, they jolted, like two kids caught doing something they shouldn't. Jason quickly sat up, trying to adjust himself, while my wife awkwardly acted like she'd just been resting. They weren't sitting together, but everything about the moment, the tension, the silence, the nervous looks, told me something had happened, or was about to. I didn't say a word, just turned around and walked back to the bedroom. A moment later, she followed me, pretending like nothing had happened. But I could feel it, smell it. The air was heavy, thick with implication. My instincts screamed at me, but I had no proof. Not yet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, going over every strange detail from the past few weeks. Her secretive phone call, the oddly timed invitation to Jason, the swimsuit, the glances, the giggles, the late-night outings. And now, the scene I just walked in on. Still, I had nothing concrete, just a web of suspicion held together by gut feelings and circumstantial moments. The next morning, I couldn't hold it in anymore. While the kids were busy, I asked my wife to step into the bedroom. My tone was calm but firm. I told her I'd seen enough to suspect something was going on between her and Jason, and I needed the truth. Her reaction? Explosive. She didn't just deny it. She attacked me. She accused me of being paranoid, delusional, and, with cruel emphasis, deaf. She called me insecure, irrational, and claimed I was projecting my frustrations about aging and hearing loss onto her. Her outburst caught me off guard. She turned herself into the victim, weaponized my disability, and raised her voice so loud I was afraid the kids might hear. And just like that, I lost the argument. She shut me down with such conviction that, despite all my doubts, I ended up apologizing. Apologizing for accusing her without proof. Apologizing for making her cry. Apologizing for letting my emotions get the best of me. I felt humiliated, small, powerless. From that point on, the energy between us changed. The rest of our vacation was strained. She treated me like I was a burden, cold, dismissive, distant. I was the one who had made the mistake. Or so she wanted me to believe. But deep inside, the voice of reason still whispered, "You're not crazy. You know what you saw. And you know what's going on." 2 days before we were set to return home, the atmosphere was still tense. The kids, thankfully, hadn't picked up on everything, but they could sense something wasn't right. My wife, now avoiding being alone with Jason, only interacted with him during group activities. It was a shift so noticeable that even our youngest asked, "Why isn't Mom talking to Jason much anymore?" I didn't answer. Instead, I began quietly observing. She was trying to course correct, trying to make it look like nothing had ever happened. But that sudden change only confirmed my suspicions. That night, I proposed something unexpected. I asked her to have dinner with me, just the two of us, at a quiet little restaurant near the resort. She was surprised, maybe even suspicious, but agreed. We walked there in silence. She wore a sundress I had bought her years ago, and I couldn't help but think how strange it was. The woman beside me had become someone I barely recognized. Not because of her looks, but because of what I now knew she was capable of. At the table, I didn't confront her. I didn't mention Jason. Instead, I played it cool. I apologized for accusing her earlier, said I'd been stressed, and that I missed how things used to be between us. I wanted her to relax, to let her guard down. And she did. She spoke softly, even emotionally, admitting she hadn't spent as much time with me lately. She blamed my hearing loss, our different sleep patterns, and said Jason was just a friend. She denied everything again, of course, but her tone had changed, less defensive, more calculated, like she was managing an image. She still wouldn't admit a thing, but she didn't have to, because what she didn't know was that I had security cameras at home. And as soon as we landed, I planned to find the truth the quiet, methodical way, without accusations, without arguments, just evidence. When we finally arrived home, I played the role of the tired, recovering husband perfectly. I told my wife I wasn't feeling well and asked her to pick up a forgotten prescription. She agreed without hesitation, unaware I was buying time. I told her I'd take a different taxi with the kids, giving her a head start. Jason, thankfully, had taken a separate ride back to his parents' place. As soon as we got home, I moved fast. I went straight to the security system, specifically the footage stored on the game room and hallway cameras. My house was wired with cameras in common areas: front porch, backyard, living room, home theater, and the hallway leading to the guest bedroom. These cameras automatically stored footage for 30 days before overriding. I just hoped she hadn't thought to delete anything, or hadn't realized what those cameras could see. I located the 2 days before our vacation. Jason had stayed at our home during that time. I plugged in a portable hard drive and began downloading the raw footage. My heart was pounding. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, just that I had to see something. Anything. When the download finished, I watched quietly in my office with the door locked. My wife was still out, and the kids were in their rooms. The footage started to play, and there it was. At 5:33 a.m., my wife appeared on the game room camera. Jason met her in the hallway. They kissed, passionately. She pushed him playfully, giggled like a teenager, and turned to leave, but not before he smacked her gently on the backside. She didn't resist. She laughed and walked away. That was all I needed. But it didn't stop there. Around 1:15 a.m. the next day, she appeared again, this time heading down the hall toward the guest bedroom, Jason's room. She didn't come out until nearly 3 a.m. The footage didn't lie. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in weeks, my mind was calm. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't insecure. I wasn't overreacting. I had proof. I didn't confront her that night. I needed to do it on my terms, with control, not emotion. The next morning, while the kids were busy, I calmly told her I needed to talk. I opened my laptop, queued up the edited footage, just the essentials, the hallway kiss, and her late-night visit to Jason's room. I didn't say a word, just pressed play. Within seconds, she knew. She froze. Her face turned pale. Then came the tears, silent at first, then sobbing. She covered her mouth, shaking her head, refusing to look at the screen again. I waited. I need to know everything, I said coldly. How long? How far? And why? But she didn't answer, just cried harder. I kept my voice steady, told her I was done playing dumb. I reminded her that while I might have lost some hearing, I hadn't lost my sense of reality or self-respect. Then I dropped the bomb. If you don't agree to my terms, financial, legal, and personal, I'll show this video to the kids. That got her attention. She dropped to her knees, begging, not out of love, but fear, desperation, panic. She swore she'd agree to anything I asked if I kept it from our children. So I laid out the deal. We'd file for divorce on my terms. She'd accept whatever alimony I chose. And publicly, We'd say it was due to irreconcilable differences. No drama, no stories, no names. She agreed. The next evening, we sat down with the kids and told them we were separating. The kids were shocked and emotional. They begged us to reconsider, but we stuck to the script. My wife played her part, quiet, regretful, but composed. Only I knew what was really behind her silence. And I sat there, holding my secret like a loaded weapon. After we broke the news, the house fell into an eerie silence. My youngest took it the hardest, confused, heartbroken, unable to grasp why her family was crumbling. Our oldest daughter was more composed, but suspicious. She sensed something deeper was going on, and she was right. The next day, she pulled me aside in the room that used to be mine and my wife's. She sat next to me, trying to coax the truth out with teary eyes and a desperate voice. I gave her a vague, softened version. Sometimes, people fall out of love. Sometimes, things break quietly over time. But she didn't buy it completely. Later that day, I picked up my new hearing aids. They worked far better than I expected, giving me a strange sense of clarity not just physically, but emotionally. I felt like I was rejoining the world, like I'd been underwater and was finally surfacing. Meanwhile, my wife barely left her room. She skipped meals, cried behind closed doors. Her absence made the house feel even heavier. My oldest daughter kept the kitchen running. She cooked, cleaned, tried to hold the family together. I couldn't have been prouder of her. She reminded me of how our home used to feel, warm, stable, united. But we weren't that family anymore. Every dinner felt like a performance. Smiles were forced. Small talk barely masked the cracks. I sat at the table alone some nights, wondering how we got here. How I, someone who had dedicated decades to building a life, raising children, creating security, ended up blindsided and emotionally gutted by the person I trusted most. I still hadn't told the kids the truth, but I knew the time was coming. Days passed in a blur. My wife eventually asked me to meet her at a quiet restaurant we both used to love. She said she wanted to talk, properly. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but something told me it was necessary. The weight of the silence between us was affecting the entire house. We barely spoke on the drive there. Once seated, she wasted no time. She apologized, profusely, emotionally, and with a kind of vulnerability I hadn't seen in years. She admitted everything. The affair, the deception, the shame. But her apology felt hollow. Not because it wasn't emotional, but because it was only happening now, after being caught. She said she loved me, that she never meant to hurt anyone, that Jason didn't mean anything emotionally. It was just physical, that she had been frustrated, felt neglected, and had convinced herself that she needed something more. She confessed that her desire for intimacy had grown as mine declined, that she had hinted about it many times but felt ignored, that Jason had simply been available and willing. She tried to rationalize it, even said she had sought therapy, that she'd tried using tools and medication to suppress her urges. But none of it worked. She described the affair as an uncontrollable impulse, a coping mechanism for something deeper she couldn't fix. I listened. I didn't interrupt. And when she was done, I asked her one thing. If I hadn't caught you, would you have stopped? She didn't answer. She just looked away. That told me everything I needed to know. After that dinner, I didn't sleep much. I kept turning her words over in my head. I didn't doubt that she felt guilty, but guilt wasn't the same as remorse. She hadn't come clean because of conscience. She came clean because there was no place left to hide. Still, a part of me hesitated. Not out of love, but because of everything we'd built. The decades, the kids, the memories. I wasn't sure I was ready to throw it all away, even if I could never look at her the same. So I saw a therapist. I laid it all out, everything from the affair to the emotional fallout. He listened, asked thoughtful questions, and then gave me simple, grounded advice. If you're even considering staying, there have to be rules. Boundaries. No contact with him. Ever again. I took that advice to heart. That night, I sat my wife down and laid out my terms like a contract. No contact with Jason. Not in person, not online, not even through mutual friends. We tell the kids, at least the older two, they deserve the truth. Therapy, individually and possibly as a couple. Zero lies from here on out. I told her if I caught even one more deception, it was over. She agreed. Hesitantly, but sincerely. Then came the hardest part. We waited until after dinner. Sent our youngest to her room. Sat down with our son and daughter. And told them. Well, she told them. Her voice trembled as she admitted she had been unfaithful with someone close to the family. My daughter sat stunned. My son erupted, storming out before she could even finish. It was chaos, and deservedly so. But for the first time in weeks, the lies were over. The night she confessed to the kids shattered whatever illusion remained. My daughter sat frozen in disbelief, whispering, "I knew it." Like she'd been sensing something but hoped she was wrong. She didn't cry immediately, just stared at her mother like she couldn't recognize the woman anymore. My son, though, was a different story. He exploded, cursing, yelling, fists clenched. Then he slammed the door to his room, so hard the walls shook. I'd never seen him like that. And the worst part? Jason had been his best friend. Practically family. Later, my daughter hugged me without saying a word. It was a quiet, trembling kind of embrace. I couldn't bring myself to return it fully. I was too numb. Meanwhile, my wife fled to the guest room, crying hysterically behind a locked door. I wanted to feel triumphant. I had the truth. I had the upper hand. But all I felt was empty. That night, I went to bed alone. Not out of choice, just habit by now. The house felt like it had lost its soul. The next morning, the tension hadn't gone anywhere. My son left the house without saying a word. My wife stayed locked in her room. My daughter cooked breakfast, trying to keep the atmosphere calm. I sat at the table wondering if this broken version of our family could ever resemble something whole again. Then came the silence. Not just the kind you hear, but the kind that hurts. For the first time since I confronted her, I wondered, had I done the right thing by letting her stay? That afternoon, things took a turn none of us were prepared for. My wife still hadn't emerged from her room. At first, we figured she was just ashamed or avoiding the fallout. But as the hours passed, concern started to creep in. My daughter knocked on her door gently, calling out. No answer. She knocked again. Then louder. 10 minutes passed. Still nothing. A growing pit formed in my stomach. I rushed upstairs and knocked hard. No response. The door was locked. Panic set in. With my daughter's help, we forced it open, and what we found stopped us cold. She was lying motionless beneath the covers. A glass of water and a bottle of pills sat on the nightstand. Her body was still, and the color in her face was fading. My daughter screamed. I checked for a pulse. Nothing. I called emergency services while my oldest daughter sobbed uncontrollably and my youngest cried out from her room, confused and terrified. When the paramedics arrived, it was already too late. She had been gone for nearly a full day. I can't describe the feeling of watching them zip the body bag. Everything stopped. My son arrived moments later and collapsed into tears. All the anger, confusion, betrayal, it all dissolved into raw grief. We stood there, broken, a family brought to its knees. Not by truth, not by justice, but by silence. It's been weeks now. The house still doesn't feel real. Her presence lingers in small ways. In the smell of her perfume on the pillows, in the untouched sundress still hanging in the laundry room, in the ghost of her laugh during family dinners that now sit painfully quiet. The kids are grieving in their own ways. My son hasn't spoken much since that night. He moved in with a friend for now, trying to process what his mother did, not just to me, but to him, to his trust, to his childhood. My youngest still asks when things will go back to normal. And my oldest, she stepped into the caretaker role. Too young to carry this weight, but doing it anyway. She checks on me every morning like I'm the one who might disappear next. As for me, I don't know if I'm mourning my wife or the illusion I held for so long. I trusted her with everything, my heart, my home, my family. I thought love and time made us bulletproof. But in the end, I was wrong. She didn't just cheat. She lied. She gaslit. She weaponized my vulnerability. And when the weight of her choices came crashing down, she couldn't face what she'd done. So she left us to carry it for her. I've started therapy again. Not just for grief, but to understand how I let this happen. How I missed the signs. How I mistook silence for peace. I still don't know whether I'll ever forgive her. But I do know this. Truth matters. No matter how painful. Because lies don't just break marriages. They shatter lives. They poison trust. And when the truth finally bursts through, it rarely arrives clean. One lesson I've learned? If your gut is screaming, listen. Because pretending not to hear can cost you far more than you ever imagined. If this story moved you, please give it a like. It helps more people hear stories that matter. Your support means everything.